Awesome, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's session. The title of today's webinar is How to Rebuild Manufactured Factory-Built Homes and ADUs. Today, we will walk homeowners through the permitting and zoning process and explore manufactured homes, factory-built homes, pre-approved homes, and ADU options, including the key requirements and benefits of these options. We can go to the next slide. I'm Nikki C. Hall. I'm an associate director on our solutions team here at Enterprise Community Partners. I will be leading today's session and will be joined by Araceli and Brian, who are on the team here with me at Enterprise, who will be supporting with the facilitation today as well. You can go to the next slide. We are all based in our Southern California office. However, Enterprise Community Partners is a national nonprofit that works across the United States to ensure families have a place to call home. We can go to the next slide. The webinar today is being facilitated in collaboration with two key partners, the Center by Lendistry and Office of Office. We are working collaboratively to support survivors as they navigate the rebuilding process. As part of this partnership, Enterprise will host several interactive webinars to empower survivors with practical tools and guidance throughout the rebuilding process. This is the third webinar of our series, and we hope you all are able to join us for the remaining webinars. As we will be covering a range of topics to support survivors working to rebuild their lives. And so we've had the two prior, the first one focused on understanding your options and the second on financing. And so all those materials can be referenced on the online, and we will be sharing them out after the webinar too if you want to reference past webinars. All of these webinars are made possible through the generous support from Wells Fargo, BMO, and US Bank. Thank you all so much for your contributions and the ability to have these webinars. If you have any questions during today's webinar, please use the Q&A box. We will try to answer questions in the chat throughout the webinars, but we'll have a formal Q&A period after each speaker and then towards the end of the webinar. Additionally, if translation is needed, please use the closed captioning button that can provide translation in over 30 languages. The webinar today is being recorded, and all of the materials, including the PowerPoint, any resources shared in the recording will be uploaded into the LA Rebuild Hub. The LA Rebuild Hub just launched in February, and it's a centralized user-friendly website providing single-family homeowners, mobile homeowners, renters, and our nonprofit partners with access to tons of resources that will help the rebuilding process. Please note that today's webinar should not be used for any sales or promotional pitches for your own personal businesses. This is a space of education, and we ask that if you are here, from a company to refrain from any of those sales pitches during the session today. In the chat, we're now dropping a link to the LA Rebuild Hub, so please use that website. And then also want to share a disclaimer before we begin that the information in this presentation is for general guidance only and does not constitute any legal, financial, or insurance advice. Individual circumstances do vary, and so it's important that you consult with a professional, licensed professional, including contractors, insurance, legal advisors, before making any formal decisions about rebuilding. We go to the next slide. Thank you, Brian, for sharing the website in the chat. And so I want to just outline our agenda today. So today we're going to be covering a range of topics. We're going to start with overviewing the 5 steps to the permitting process. From there, we're going to highlight several rebuilding options that can help you save time as well as money. And then we are pleased to have several guest speakers with us today. We'll have speakers from the Foothill Catalog Foundation, Villa Homes, and National Partnership Housing Services, who will share more information about their organizations and their innovative approaches to rebuilding. We'll then cover key policy updates. Araceli will be joining us to share those to make sure that you all as homeowners are up to date with any policy changes that affect your rebuilding process. Overall, our goal today is to provide practical information, helpful resources, and clear guidance to support you throughout your rebuilding journey. So let's get started. As you begin the rebuilding process, you will hear the word planning a lot. Planning, permitting, planning refers to the policies and guidelines that shape how land is used in our communities. Planning departments aim to shape the growth and development of local communities. In practice, planning can be thought of as the local policies that impact what you can do with your property and how you can use your property. If you joined our previous webinar, sorry, my little box moved around a little bit, but if you joined our previous webinar, we went over an estimated timeline for homeowners to understand how long it would take them to rebuild. And this timeline can vary based on a number of factors. Your permitting, how long the permits take, contract availability, materials, and complexities. The overall goal that we wanted you to remember from this slide is that permitting takes on average from 2 to 4 months. Because the permitting process has been streamlined so much for those that are working to rebuild after the wildfires, we are hearing from homeowners and partners that the approval process is now taking closer to 8 weeks, which is great news to hear. During the presentation today, we're going to be focusing in on the permitting part of the timeline. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to overview the 5 steps to the permitting process and what homeowners need to keep in mind during every step to ensure permits are issued in a timely fashion. So you're going to first start by checking your property zoning and any restrictions that your property may have. This is an important first step because again, your zoning determines what you are legally allowed to build on your lot. What this includes like the type of house, how big your house can be, the size of the house, and overall the development standards. The easiest way to figure out what your lot is zoned for is using these online platforms that we have in the slide deck. You're able to search your address and quickly see the key information about your property. So if you're in the city of Los Angeles, that's CMIS. If you're in unincorporated LA County, that is ZNet. And then the city of Pasadena also has their own online zoning maps as well. And then while you're reviewing your property, it's important to look at hazards. And if your property has any hazard designations, this includes if you're located like in a flood zone, for example, these factors can really influence what you're able to build. And you may be required to do some additional design considerations because your home is located in this hazard zone. And that may affect your timeline as well as your costs. If any of this feels a little overwhelming, there are many resources and supports to help you understand what your property is zoned for. The county has created one-stop permit centers that you are able to visit and meet directly with a planning professional to help you confirm what your site is zoned for and help you really understand what are the constraints and what are the necessary next steps for me as a homeowner to move forward with rebuilding. So if you spend a little bit of time now making sure that you fully understand and comprehend what your property is zoned for, you can save a lot of time down the road if you hit any delays with the permitting. So it just helps to know before you get started and move further into the permitting process. Next, you want to prepare your application. And that starts with gathering all of the required documentation. And that includes your site plans, your architectural drawings, and any supporting documentation that can help describe what you're planning to build. Depending on your project, that can also include structural plans, energy compliance documentation, and other technical details on what you are proposing to build on your lot. At this stage, it's really important to make sure that your plans align to what it's zoned for, as well as your building codes and other requirements. Each agency has their different standards, so it's important to understand those and to make sure you don't have any delays down the line. Also important to work with if you have a team, to work with them to develop the information there to make sure what you're submitting is accurate. Go to the next slide. So before you submit your application, it's also important to think through what you want to rebuild. As a homeowner, you'll have the decision to decide if you want to build a home that is the exact same square footage. This is considered a like for like rebuild. If you want to build your home with maybe a little bit more square footage, so expanding that square footage, or completely redesign your layout and how the home was originally designed, or you can add an ADU. Each of these options have different implications on your timeline. So it could extend your timeline, the permitting process, and also property taxes, which is something to really think and keep in mind. So on the graphic here on the screen, you see the like four homes, right? And so the first one with the letter A is considered a like for like rebuild. And that means replacing your home again with a structure that matches the original square footage of the home that was lost. And it's in the same location and has the same use. There are some limited changes that you can make to your home and it still be considered like for like. So in the Palisades and the Eaton Fire affected areas, you have the ability to increase your square footage by 10%. Or less, and that still be considered a like for like a rebuild. I will note in the Eaton Fire area, there is an additional allowance of 200 square feet or 10%, whichever is greater. So you do have a little bit of wiggle room there. Like for like rebuilds benefit from expedited permitting, but you still have to comply with the current zoning standards. In the current, you are exempt from the zoning standards, but you have to comply with the fire, health, and safety codes. If you choose to do a like for like rebuild, another key benefit is the keeping your current property tax assessment. So this means the same way that your property taxes were going up gradually year over year prior to the fires, you're able to keep the same property tax assessment if you choose to do a like for like rebuild. One label with B there is expanding your square footage just a little bit. And there is some flexibility with this option as well. When you add new square footage to your home, typically that part of the addition is only a reassess if you do just not a substantial amount, but a minimal increase in square footage. This is a good option if you want to add additional space while maintaining your current tax benefits. With that said, it's important to understand if you really, really, really increase your square footage and do substantial upgrades to your home, that may trigger a full reassessment. If your rebuild is substantially different than what was there before, so more than 50% of the home is changed, that would trigger a reassessment and it may be classified as new construction at that point. In this case, the entire property could be reassessed, which may result in higher property taxes. Another option to consider is an ADU, and we're going to be joined by speakers today that will be speaking in detail about ADUs and the benefits of them. But ADUs are fully independent living units with a kitchen and a bathroom that can be attached, detached, or a converted garage. I feel like we're as a community becoming more familiar with ADUs. And in Los Angeles County, ADUs must be at least 150 square feet, and they are often assessed separately from the main home, which means they typically do not impact the assessed value of the primary home if you choose to rebuild like for like in that manner. And they're a great option for adding that additional space, intergenerational living, or creating an additional revenue income. Related to ADUs, we also have junior ADUs, which are similar, but they are typically smaller within the primary home, so attached to the primary home. They must be less than 500 square feet. They have their own entrance and kitchen, but they may share the bathroom with the main home. And so taking time to understand these options and what type of application you want to submit is very important before you move forward in the process. And so we want to quickly do a poll right now. And so are you considering a like for like rebuild? And so we will launch that poll. We go to the next slide. And we can go to the next slide too, Brian. Awesome. And see a few responses. Okay. Thank you all for responding. It seems like most are considering a like for like rebuild. And so thank you for sharing. And so as you are, once your application is ready and you're ready to move forward with submitting, it's important to double check and make sure that you have all of the required forms and documentation included to avoid any delays. Please note, because you are a wildfire survivor, you do qualify for free application submissions, so please take advantage of that. Applications can be submitted online or in person, depending on just whatever is most convenient for you. Linked here on the slides, we have the link to the online area where you would submit your application, as well as a link to the paper application that you would download and bring in person. Also want to highlight a new opportunity in Los Angeles County called the Building Plan Self-Certification Pilot Program. This program allows licensed architects and engineers to certify that the building plans meet the county codes, which can significantly speed up the review process by eliminating the need for a full plan check in some cases. This option is available for pretty much all residential projects, so single family homes, duplexes, ADUs, and it's designed to really streamline the approval process and help qualifying projects just move very quickly through the permitting process. So once you have submitted your application, you would then move into the review process. During this stage, the application will be reviewed by multiple parties to make sure that it complies with building codes, health, safety requirements. It's important to know that it's going to be reviewed by multiple people, and it is normal to have, questions and feedback come back from the various departments. And so don't think that anything is going, wrong. Like, oh my goodness, this was submitted all wrong. It's normal to have questions, and it's very common. The important thing here to remember is to respond timely to any comments that are received, and don't wait several weeks to respond. Make sure that you're responding in a timely manner, that your responses are thorough, but you can expect that there will be a feedback loop before your permits are approved to move forward. And it's really important in this stage to work closely with your design team. So your designer, your architect, your contractor during this phase, they are more familiar with the planning review process, the permitting process, and so they can answer those questions more thoroughly. And then want to just note that it's very important to stay organized. I'm going to say this a few times today, but stay organized, stay responsive, and just be proactive to make sure that there are no delays in your permitting process. So once your permits are approved and construction begins, the project is going to go through a series of inspections during construction. These inspections are scheduled throughout the rebuilding process to make sure that your home is being rebuilt to code. It is safe, and all of the building codes are being met. Inspectors will check in at various stages to check in on the structural work, electrical, plumbing, again, to make sure those safety standards are met. Once construction is complete, you will go through a final inspection, and then this final step, make sure that your home is actually safe for you to live in that home again, and you'll receive a certificate of occupancy that allows you to live there again. Without that certificate, you are not allowed to live in that home. And so those are the 5 steps. As you move through the permitting process, there are a few challenges that can really come up, or mistakes that maybe you may make that could slow the process down. And so that really is waiting too long to pull in those technical experts like the architects and your project managers. making sure you are engaging them early in the process so that all of the information that you're submitting for approval is thorough beforehand, not fully understanding what your property is zoned for. So taking the time to look on to the online platforms that we shared before to understand what you're zoned for, what I can build, understanding what like for like is, understanding, can I still add that square footage? What is 10% more for my own, for my property? And so having that information can really, delay. If you don't have that information, it can delay you. And so making sure you have all that knowledge before you move forward in submitting your application. And then organization. So not having a system in place to keep all of this information. You can keep it, paper copy. I recommend also a digital copy that can be referenced easily. And so having a way to keep organized through this process is very important. So we can go to the next slide. Want to highlight, I shared it early in the presentation, but here are the addresses for the two in-person permit centers. These centers are really designed to make homeowners, feel more comfortable in the process. They're there to answer questions, to help you submit your applications, and to really provide that guidance all in one place. These centers are super helpful for getting direct support and helping you move your project along more efficiently. And next, also want to share some great resources. I shared before, one of our partners in this work is Office of Office. They are an architectural firm. And they have created two great resources. One is a policy and architecture glossary. And then the second is a permitting tracker. And so the glossary is a great tool, useful for me as well as, I don't know all the policy and architecture and permitting terms, but it's really just like an A through Z glossary of all the words that you may encounter through your rebuilding process as you are submitting for your permits. And so please reference both that resource as well as the permitting trackers that help guide you along the way to make sure that you are not missing any step in the process. So now we quickly want to go, poll, want to see what option are you most curious about? Pre-approved plans, adding an ADU, factory-built homes, or subdividing your property. And so now, if you can take this poll so we can just see what you're interested in learning more about. So I see some pre-approved plans and factory-built homes, and also SB9. It was a lot of responses. So adding an ADU. So it sounds like we're here for the whole webinar. We want to learn everything. And so that's so glad that you are able to join us today, and we're excited to share the information with you. So we can go to the next slide. So when thinking about rebuilding, there are several options that can really help save time in the permitting process and money, depending on your own personal goals. And so one option is using pre-approved home designs. If you go to the next slide, such as those available through the Foothill Catalog Foundation, which can really help to streamline the permitting process since the plans are already approved. And they are again joining us momentarily, and they'll be speaking shortly about their pre-approved catalog. Another option is choosing manufactured or factory-built homes, including modular or panelized construction. These homes are built off-site and then assembled on your property, which can often reduce construction time and improve cost predictability. You can also consider building an ADU or an accessory dwelling unit. Shared a little bit about that earlier, but can really help to balance the cost if you're choosing to use them for additional rental income. If we go to the next slide, also want to make sure you are aware of SB 9, so Senate Bill 9, which is a California state law that makes it easier to add properties on your single family lot. So you have the option to split your lot into two parcels or build two homes on one lot, such as a duplex or two separate homes. The intent behind SB 9 is really to increase housing supply while also giving homeowners more ways to use their homes. For homeowners, this can mean opportunities, again, to add those additional units to support intergenerational living, to create that rental income, or potentially increasing their property value. Homeowners rebuilding in the Eaton Fire area have the ability to take advantage of SB 9. If you are rebuilding in the Palisades area, SB 9 is not currently permitted in your area. But wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of this legislation. That is a great tool for homeowners to utilize to really, expand the possibilities on their lot and, unlock a lot of potential for them. If we go to the next slide, so want to introduce our first speaker, who is Alex. He is the co-founder and executive director for the Foothills Catalog Foundation, who will share more information about pre-approved plans. Alex is a licensed architect and urban designer with an expertise and passion for regional transitional design. Alex and his wife co-founded the Foothill Catalog Foundation while they were evacuated from their home just a block from the Eaton Fire burn scar, in an effort to help their own friends and neighbors rebuild while retaining the distinct cultural heritage and architectural diversity of their community. Alex is a board member of the AIA Pasadena Foothill chapter and has contributed to a number of architectural and urban design projects throughout the United States. Alex, I'll turn it over to you. Would you like us to share slides, or would you like you to share?
Yeah, thanks for that intro, Dominique. I can go ahead and share my screen. That'll be
Okay.
easier for me to control. So,
Okay, awesome. We will stop sharing.
okay, let me know if you guys can see that.
Yes, we can see. Mhm.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Dominique, for that introduction. I think all that information teed up what we do at the Foothill Catalog Foundation perfectly. Talking about permitting, talking about design, talking about construction, ways we are trying to find efficiencies and streamline the process to get families rebuilding as quickly as possible, but also to make rebuilding accessible to as many families as possible. So I'll go into that and what the Foothill Catalog Foundation does. So our mission, as a nonprofit organization, is to develop this collection or catalog of pre-approved home designs that allow fire survivors of all different means, backgrounds, ethnicities to rebuild efficiently, resiliently, and affordably, but also beautifully too, retaining this really special community identity, this architectural character, this cultural heritage that is why families have lived in Altadena and the Pacific Palisades for so long. And so that's exactly what we've done. Since we launched directly after the Eaton fire, as my wife and I were still evacuated from our own home, to create this 21st century catalog of home designs, specifically for Altadena, the families, the lots, the home sizes, styles, configurations that reflect what was lost and what the need will be to rebuild, and doing the same for the Pacific Palisades community as well. So a little bit about me, and this is my wife, Cynthia here. We're both licensed architects. We are living
Wait,
and
sorry.
working.
Sorry, Alex, we're not seeing your slides advance.
Oh, oh, I am
Maybe,
seeing my own slides. Oh, how is that?
yes. I don't see, if you're referencing your wife, I don't see her. There we go.
This one, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll stick out of presentation mode so you guys can see. Um, well, these are the slides you guys missed with all the designs, but I'll get a little more into that as I go. So I'll introduce myself and my wife, Cynthia. Yeah, we're licensed architects, Dominique, as you mentioned. We're based here in Pasadena, about a half block south of the Altadena border on Montana Street. So we were, with everyone else evacuated from our watching as the fire crept. The winds shifted at the right time, and our home survive. But as architects, but more importantly, as members of the Altadena community, we were looking for a way to enable rebuilding to be accessible for as many families as possible. As we see as we go through these webinars, the design, permitting, construction processing is incredibly complex, and it's not set up for families who have just lost everything to be able to navigate. So our effort is through this mechanism of pre-approved home designs. How do we help restore the diversity and meet the need for so many different families going through this process? And that really is the theme and the identity of Altadena and the Pacific Palisades is these diverse populations that's represented in its architecture, and its diverse styles and sizes and in its landmarks, but also at its neighborhood scale and the modest homes that were lost and from homes, as small as 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom that craftsman bungalows, Spanish cottages, homes that families have lived in and prospered in for generations. And so this diversity in place in architecture is representative of all the people that have been through this community. And now the families that we're trying to keep in this community to be able to restore and stitch back together what we lost. So that's the goal of our organization is really through pre-approved plans, through this catalog of home mechanism, to minimize the time it takes to build, minimize the cost, but really eliminate this massive knowledge burden and to be able to navigate the complexities of building anything in Los Angeles in 2026, make that easy and accessible and affordable for as many families as possible, while providing a really high standard of quality for what these homes will represent, utilizing the best design and construction practices in terms of resiliency, sustainability, regional specificity to allow dignified homes and character to be part of this rebuild as well. So that's exactly where the Foothill Catalog Foundation steps in. And our model is, for many of you might know the Sears catalog of old. In the 20th century, Sears Roebuck kind of popularized this model by literally publishing a magazine or a catalog of home designs that families of all different backgrounds from around the country could simply access these home designs and the kit of parts it would take to build them, and really made quality, affordable housing attainable for as many families as possible. So in the 21st century, as construction industry, as building has become much more complex, we are looking to channel the spirit of the simplicity of the catalog home program of the 20th century, but bringing it to 2026 to best serve Altadena and Pacific Palisades residents. And so these are some of the designs that we've pre-approved through the county so far. We're constantly adding to the catalog. We have about 40 designs that are now pre-approved in Altadena that reflect, again, this diversity of style, size, configuration, from our craftsman homes to Spanish mission, Spanish colonial homes, ranging from 400 square foot ADUs all the way up to 2,500 square foot homes, and everything in between to really serve the need of all different families looking to rebuild with a specific lot dimensions, with specific home dimensions, and adding options that are lesser known, like the colonial, Norman, Tudor, Revival styles, and a lot of the post-war architecture as well, from ranch or minimal traditional or mid-century modern. And doing so in the Palisades as well. We've just started working with the city of Los Angeles and the mayor's office there to pre-approve 5 designs out in the Palisades, and working to grow that catalog similarly. So talking a little more, I'll go kind of high level over what pre-approved plans can save on average. And, as an architect working before the fires, looking at what designing, permitting, and building a single family home would look like. Typically, that process takes months, if not years, and tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to go through that process, to hire an architect, hire a team of engineers, hire the consultants, go through the rounds of plan check with the county or the city. And that is all before, you get shovels in the ground and actually break ground and go through the construction process, which can be incredibly unpredictable as well. So for in this rebuild effort to make that process more streamlined, more efficient, and more predictable to help save time and money, what the Foothill Catalog Foundation does is we do all of that design work. We do all of that pre-permitting work to pre-approve all of these designs so that the only submittal necessary for the county or for the city to rebuild a home is a single page site plan that you submit to the county and goes through all those agencies Dominique mentions, but it's a single drawing that is reviewed and approved. And we're seeing time frames of 2 to 4 weeks to be able to get final building permit to get shovels in the ground. So it's an incredible time savings, but the cost that's associated with just even pre-construction costs that we're seeing, can be within $100,000 to $150,000. And then actually providing some clarity in these builds where contractors know exactly what they're going to be building and what things are going to be costing. So that clarity provides cost savings on the construction side too. So we're seeing our targeting kind of square footage. We're hitting that of $400 to $450 a square foot across a variety of our designs. And so we put those designs to use now. It's like I said, we've pre-approved and our catalog is growing of these designs of all different sizes, styles, configuration. Last month we moved in our first family, the Wood family on Pine and Fair Oaks. And they're a great example of how a family who, Ken and Carol are 84 and 86 years old. They would not be able to go through this complex process of custom designing a home, custom permitting a home, and then figuring out how to pay for that in construction. So, in partnership with Habitat for Humanity, San Gabriel Valley, we were able to expedite their rebuild through the pre-approved plan, the first pre-approved plan in LA County history, which was the Lewis, which you see on the bottom right there. We met them in June when we pre-approved the first plan. They broke ground in October of last year, and we moved them into their home in March. So within 9 months, they were able to get back into a home using pre-approved plans, using catalog homes, and saving hundreds of thousands of dollars in the process as well. So we're working with more and more families. I was just at a groundbreaking this morning as well as Monday. We just pre-approved 4 new plans in the last 2 days. So we're constantly adding to the catalog and constantly putting those to use with families in the community. And so what a lot of people also don't know about pre-approved plans and what the Foothill Catalog Foundation does is we have a team of architects, designers that are working on these designs, but then also a whole team of homeowners, a homeowner engagement support team. We have a team of 20 people that are all based out here in Pasadena, and a team that is centered out in the Palisades as well to help guide people through this process. As licensed architects, as members of this community, we've created this really simple, streamlined, step-by-step journey of how to use a pre-approved plan and how we can help guide people for what's feasible for their lot, what's feasible for their budget, and really guiding them through this even truncated roadmap that is using a pre-approved plan in this rebuild effort. So the first step for all of that is really just to schedule a consultation. If you ever want to talk to us, that's the first step of leading down this process. And even if people are still curious, we're a nonprofit organization. We're really looking to help inform people of all their options, as Dominique kind of outlined. So happy to have a conversation and outline what a pre-approved plan could work for individual families rebuilds, or to just help provide some guidance and clarity with one-on-one support. And I'd like to end with just some testimonials of just how appreciative the community has been and how they've taken up the support of what we've been doing through the Foothill Catalog. I think I often hear hope is not a plan, but hope is incredibly valuable. And creating hope and optimism that rebuilding can be possible for families of all different means, backgrounds, ethnicities, situations. That is our goal at the Foothill Catalog. And now really excited to see that momentum start to pick up and getting families back home. So I think we have a few minutes for questions. I want to thank you all for your time. I'll leave this slide up as we're fielding questions. This goes to our consultation request page, but also to our catalog page. You can take a look at all of the different pre-approved designs that we have online. Look through all the different images, the floor plans, the 3D views as well. And feel free to reach out to us anytime with more questions. I'm sure Dominique and Enterprise can have our contact info for whoever needs guidance or is interested in learning more.
Thank you, Alex, for sharing it. Thank you to you and your wife for just being so responsive to community needs and stepping in where you saw that there was a gap. We do have one question in the chat, and it's asking if the Lewis plan can be enlarged in proportion to one's land.
So the with pre-approved plans, that's a good question. So pre-approved plans are the architecture, the structure, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all the energy calculations. These are pre-reviewed and stamped by the county. So it provides some flexibility in terms of finishes, fixtures, and the way you can clad the home. But the actual structure of the home has to stay the same, and that's how you access the efficiency of pre-approved plans. So you're sacrificing a little bit of customization, but you're
Mhm.
gaining so much time, so much cost savings, and so much clarity in the process. And the reason, these homes are locked in is that's why we built such an expansive catalog. So for the Lewis plan, that's about 1,260 square feet. It's 3 beds, 2 bath. For people looking for similar options, we have similar plans that are 1,400 square feet, 1,500 square feet, that are 4 beds, 2 baths, that are smaller, 2 beds, 2 baths, 1,000 square feet, 1,100 square feet. So that's really the goal, is to provide options in every different category. And whether they're looking for a craftsman home, a Spanish home, a modern home, that's why we keep adding to the catalog, so that people can access the benefits of a pre-approved plan, but they can really have some ownership and choice still over what they're building to choose for their new home.
Thank you. And we have another question on, are there any plans to add prefab elements to any of the models or new models that would also add more savings?
Yeah. So I mean, that's a perfect segue for Jenna too. And we've been working together and trying to figure out how we can make this process even more efficient, and how we can incorporate prefabricated solutions, modular manufactured solutions into the catalog as well. So right now, our homes are fully available to be site built. So whether it's Habitat for Humanity, whether it's local contractors, whether it's larger builders, we are an architectural nonprofit that is able to work with any fire survivor and any builder to access our homes. And we're working to have more options for cost savings, time savings beyond that. So yeah, any more questions like that, we'd be happy to kind of outline what the future holds and kind of what options we have available amongst the different builders we've been working with already here in Altadena and the Palisades.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. And then I have a question. I've been seeing the Altadena Build Back Foundation, and you were awarded a grant. Is that something that survivors have access to take advantage of the catalog, and how does that work?
Yeah, so the Altadena Builds Back Foundation, it provided us an incredible grant to support our work. We utilize philanthropic funding to be able to take this burden off of the shoulders of homeowners, so they don't have to go through this permitting process. So that funding is set up specifically to help build our capacity, but is also working with a lot of nonprofit partners like Habitat for Humanity, like Samaritan's Purse, a lot of the other case management organizations here in Altadena and the Palisades. And so that funding, we're working to build funding to subsidize the cost of our plan so that we can offer our services at no cost. Right now, our typical fire survivor rate is a $5 a square foot cost to access the full set of plans, all of the guidance that it takes to work with the Foothill catalog. So, for a 1,200, 1,300 square foot home, that's maybe $6,500. But for families of significant need who are looking to really maximize the utility of their current funding, that's where we're working with charitable organizations to offset those costs even further. So that's part of what that ABBF grant supports, and looking for more partners to help alleviate even more cost savings to homeowners.
Well, thank you, Alex, so much for joining us and sharing more information about the catalog. We will definitely be including your information in the recap email. Again, thank you for sharing. We will now
Thanks.
pass it to Jenna from making sure I add the spotlight to you from Villa Home, who will be joining us to share more about manufactured and modular and construction in that light and prefabricated construction. And so would love to now turn it over to you, Jenna. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Dominique. And just checking that you can see my screen and everything is working.
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to meet you. I am Jenna from Villa. I'm head of strategy and policy for our team. And what that really means in the context of Altadena is that I've been working with a lot of nonprofits and a lot of ecosystem partners like Dominique, like Alex at the Foothill Catalog Foundation, to try to see how our method of building homes offsite using prefabricated methods can really help to save homeowners time and hopefully help you save on costs. So I'm going to go through that a little bit now from the perspective of Villa and how we make that work. And so our mission is to build a next generation home building platform. And what that really means is we want to be easy and fast and cost efficient for anyone that we work with to be able to build homes more quickly using some really great technology, which is basically, can you build a home and parts of your home in a factory in order to, again, make it easier, make it faster, make it more cost efficient. So let's talk about what that means in more detail. Just briefly, I'll give a quick overview of Villa. You can see a lot of text on this screen, but the most important thing to know is that we have delivered hundreds of homes across California. We also build in Colorado. And we also do not ourselves own a factory. This is actually a really important thing that I would stress for any homeowners who are looking at prefab is there's a difference between the factory partner and your builder, and then sometimes who is doing the work. And Villa does not own a factory ourselves, although some of the other prefab providers in Altadena and who are working in Altadena do. We instead partner with factories that are located in the Inland Empire. The factories have been in operation for decades. They're really, really good partners. And then we are also a turnkey builder and your general contractor. And so depending on, again, the organization or the builder that you're working with, that can differ. What you heard Alex mention, for example, is that we're thinking of how can we bring some of the Foothill catalog designs and ethos into the work that we do and maybe use our relationships with factory partners to help build plans like the Lewis. And so you can see that there's a network here. And let me see if I can help explain that even a little bit further with some other slides. But one of the other things to know about offsite, Villa is an only offsite construction provider. And so what that means is that we don't actually build any homes using traditional methods. We only work with factory partners. And so this makes us a really good example of how we can hopefully help you to save costs, save time, make it easier. Some of the things that you see on screen here are the different advantages of thinking about offsite construction. So generally, when you are ordering a home with Villa, you're going to have a lot of certainty about that home because once we put that order into the factory, it's going to get built. It's going to get built, and we'll have a really good timeline and a really strong understanding of that delivery date. Generally, we see lower costs. Of course, this really matters depending on your specific lot, the specific home you're looking for. But one of the things about factory construction is that you are using a lot of the advantages of factory production in order to lower costs. A good example maybe of this is if you wanted to buy a new car, you could go to a dealership, you could go to a Ford factory and say, hey, I'd like a car, and it was built on an assembly line. There were a lot of efficiencies in that process. Alternately, you could build a custom car in your driveway, which is awesome. And that is a great way to build a custom car. But your custom car built in your driveway is probably going to cost a little bit more than this Ford factory who's been building homes, building cars for decades and has a lot of efficiencies. And so I use that as a little bit of a hyperbolic example here to demonstrate why we sometimes see speed and cost that can be realized using factories. And then on the last two pieces here, we really think about homes as products. Again, we are ordering this from a factory, and they're really, really high performance. So let's talk a little bit more about what we build. And so Villa provides both detached ADUs. You can see some beautiful pictures here on screen of some of our completed projects. We also build primary homes, and you can see some of the renders here of the many plans that we have. This is important, and I think, Dominique, to your point, Villa is just one of several providers. Many of the other offsite construction providers that you may have talked to may do both ADUs and single family homes, but you should definitely check. Some of them are only doing single family homes and some of them are only doing ADUs. Villa happens to do both, but that's something that you would really want to make sure to understand. And let's talk a little bit more about how site-built construction and off-site construction differ. And this is probably one of the most important pages that we can talk about during our time today. So on the top of the screen, what you see is a typical site-built construction project from how our team has seen this in many projects that we have watched from across the street of where we're building our homes. So just like any project, and Alex, I think, went through some of this, of course, you're going to pick the home that you want. You're going to go through permitting. And then there's going to be a lot of site work that happens. You're going to prepare the site, you're going to pour a foundation, then you're actually going to build the home, right? And so you can think of lumber getting delivered to site, materials getting delivered to site. You're going to have a lot of subcontractors show up and actually do that work. At the end of that, of course, you're going to finish that and do closeout and get a certificate of occupancy. The phrase there is really like you're getting the keys to your new home and you're going to be able to move in. On the bottom side of the screen, what you're seeing is an offsite construction process. And here you can see that the on-site construction piece is cut into two phases. We're still doing permitting, we're still doing site grading and prep and pouring your foundation. All of that is just like normal. But at the same time as the site work is happening, we're also building that home with our factory partners in the Inland Empire. And so that means that you're realizing some of those time savings because those two things can happen in process. We don't need to wait for your foundation to be poured in order to start building that home with our factory partners. Versus in on-site construction, of course, you can't start building the home until the foundation is poured. Where are you going to put the home? And so when we bring our homes to site, then we finish out the installation, we connect that home to your foundation, tie it down, it's permanently installed, and then we are going to close out and hand you your keys. But I think that time savings component is one of the most important things to know about offsite construction, and the fact that working with factories can sometimes realize cost efficiencies as well. And so you're seeing on the right-hand side here with this little blue box, if you can see my cursor, this can be structurally faster. You get less exposure because you're building in a factory to some disruptions. And sometimes it can be a little bit easier with permitting and inspections. This is a quick example, and I'm showing a very cool video that we have of actually a neighborhood we are building in Northern California up in Santa Rosa. And you can see what it looks like when we bring some of our homes to site. And so these homes come fully wrapped. You can think of it like kind of like a wrapping on a present. They come wrapped and protected as they are getting driven. Our teams have taken that wrapping off as they arrive, and you can see these homes getting installed on those foundations. This is where those homes are going to, again, get permanently connected to those foundations. But what you're really getting is essentially a very, very complete box that used a lot of factory efficiencies in order to build your home. The homes are generally made with the same materials and fixtures and finishes that you would have chosen for an on-site build. And that's something that I'm more than happy to talk about in follow-up. But you're seeing what that process looks like. So hopefully that was a little bit helpful. So the last couple of slides that I'm going to go through really talk about what Villa builds and some of the questions that you might want to ask as you think about working with an offsite provider, whether it's Villa or someone else. One thing that we are super excited about as a company is what's called a cross-mod home. And there's a lot of text on this page, but the main thing to know is that this is a type of home that was created and has some criteria from lenders like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that make sure that your home, even though it was built in a factory, is inspected, is considered, has the same quality, just like a site-built home. And so again, when we think about energy efficiency, when we think about typical features like garages or porches, when we think about the foundation requirements and the inspections, all of these things, if you are going to buy a cross-mod home, are required. And this is what Villa is building when we think about our primary homes to help homeowners rebuild in Altadena. And you can see on the right-hand side an example of a home that we are building for a customer. Villa, much like the Foothill catalog, also has some pre-approved plans. And as Dominique had shared, these can help cut time, they can add some efficiencies. And so these are all, again, off-site built. We would build these homes with our factory partners in the Inland Empire, and these would get delivered just like you saw in that video to your site. These, again, add to the efficiency of offsite construction, where you're taking a pre-approved plan. In the first phase, you can find some efficiencies there, and then you add on the efficiencies of also working with a factory and doing, again, that parallel path between some of your site work and when the home is actually built. The last thing that I'll cover is that offsite construction doesn't mean that you are making a trade-off necessarily on being wildfire ready. And so you can see a couple of things on screen here about how we build our homes. Again, something that you want to ask any offsite provider that you're working with. This is specific to Villa. And so definitely check if you're working with someone else, you want to ask them how are they thinking about wildfire safety. But our materials are much like what you would want from any site-built provider. You've got Class A fire-rated roofs, you've got really thoughtful design around siding, where your vents are. We're thinking about windows. And so just like a site-built home, offsite construction doesn't mean, again, that you are making any trade-offs on safety. And a couple of last things I'll say is that there is a lot of data on this page as well. We love data at Villa. What's important to see is that these homes appreciate just like site-built homes. And so happy to chat more with anyone else, but you're really not making a trade-off when you think about building this home. And what does that mean for future appreciation of this home if someday you want to pass it to, other family members, or if someday you decide to refinance. And the last thing I'll show is a couple of pretty pictures of other homes that we have built around California. And so you can see some of our ADU examples and some of the inside finishes of what we choose for our homes. So again, you're not making a trade-off, in my opinion, or our company's opinion, on quality and finishes. These look great. They just happen to be built in a factory nearby, and then we drive them to your site. And so with that, I'm actually going to skip these last things. We've got a great team that wants to help you, and I'll stop there.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I had the opportunity to tour one of the homes when it was a showcase in Altadena. We do have a question in the chat around if there is availability to view a Villa home still in LA County. Is there still a showcase for homeowners to take advantage of, or in-person viewing?
That is such a good question. We are opening a model home this summer. Unfortunately, we hit some permitting snags of all things as we were trying to open that unit up. And so if you would like to reach out to me via this chat or anything else, more than happy to find a way for you to see it up close. But we don't have an open model home unit at this moment.
And then there's a question around warranty and longevity. Do the homes come with any type of warranty?
The homes, because they are converted to real property as soon as they hit the site and as soon as we tie it down to the foundation, you've got the same builder's warranties that you would pretty much from a site-built provider. And so 10-year protection on big structural things. I think depending on what you're asking, more than happy to follow up. But the way I think about it is it's actually more protection because you also have the factory that's going to be providing a warranty on top of us as a builder. And so in a site built sense, you would normally have your builder. You've also got our factory partner that's providing a warranty to make sure that you have exactly what you need.
And then this is the last question is around square footage, and if plans include the square footage from the garage as well.
That is a very good question. I do not believe they include the garage, but let me make sure to follow up on that and get an answer to you. And so, Dominique, I would love to make sure I can answer who we're
Yeah,
going
I
to.
think maybe I'll attach a Q&A to
That'd
the
be awesome.
email recap. And then we actually do have a few other questions that have come in around appliances. Do you all supply appliances? Um, and yeah, you guys supply appliances.
We do supply the appliances, and so those appliances are coming already installed in the home. You may remember from that video, like most of that
Mhm.
home is kind of coming like 95% complete. And so we are typically looking at Energy Star appliances, like pretty standard what you would get in kind of an entry level home. I think the important thing to know about Villa in particular is like the phrase I use is we're not a Porsche. Like if you can afford a Porsche and you want to build your beautiful custom home Porsche, like go get a Porsche. We are not that. We are a little bit more entry level, and so you're not going to get like the Viking range of your dreams, but you are going to get some really good appliances for your home that we get really good cost efficiencies with our factory partners in procuring.
Awesome. And then speaking about customization, is there any opportunity for the interior customization or is all standard?
That really depends on your particular lot and it depends on the plan that you're seeking. So much like Alex said, so if you're using one of our pre-approved plans, we have a much less customization allowed. If you're
Hmm.
using one of our non-pre-approved plans, there are certain
Okay.
changes that we can make. And so it's a little bit like anything, it depends on your
Hmm.
situation. And I
Got it.
just confirmed, Dominique, that the square footage does not include the garages.
Okay. Got it. Thank you for getting that answer so quickly. And then one more, did they just a question on clarity between factory warranties and builder warranties and how they differ. If there is it just like a difference in coverage length and how they are different?
It's a little bit of a difference in coverage length. It also is a difference in what you are claiming a warranty for. And so this is a little bit technical, but if it's,
Mhm.
oh, my dishwasher stopped working or, my closet bar fell down, some of those things are covered for less time just in California
Mhm.
by law. If you're thinking about big questions like, oh my gosh, something is wrong with my foundation or like, oh, like, oh, some big thing happens, that is where the builder or the factory is going to be liable for a longer period of time. So again, it depends on the issue that you would be claiming, and it depends on the length of time. I think the main takeaway on warranties is that it much like a site-built home, you are covered, and we as a builder are making sure that that is true, and we're required by California law to serve you just the same way.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for your time. We really have appreciated your presentation, and I will do my best to send a Q&A recap, everyone. So thank you for your questions as well. We will now turn it over to our last speaker for today, Mel from NPHS, who will be sharing more about ADUs and as well as their ADU financing opportunities. So thank you again, and I'll turn it over to Mel. Let's add a spotlight. Mel. And
All right. Can everybody see my screen?
yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dominique. And I hope I pronounced it right. I do
Yeah.
have a friend named Dominique, and he's French, and he doesn't like it mispronounced. So trying to get my ducks in a row here. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mel D. McCauley. I'm with Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services. I am the Director for Community Lending and Investment. And I want to start with a simple idea. After disaster, the real crisis is not only that a structure is lost. The deeper crisis is that time, stability, and control are lost at the same moment. A family may still own the land. They may still have roots in the neighborhood. They may even have some combination of insurance, savings, or public support. But what they often do not have is a recovery pathway that is fast enough, predictable enough, and practical enough to get them home again without being overwhelmed by the rebuilding process itself. That is the lens I want to offer today. This is not a presentation about ADUs as a trend or as a planning concept or as an abstract housing typology. This is a presentation about recovery. More specifically, it is about how factory-built ADUs can function as a practical post-disaster recovery tool, and how NPHS can help operationalize that model through housing counseling, which is our education, community lending, and delivery. The central question is this: how do we help families get back onto the land they already own, faster, with more certainty, and with less exposure to the chaos that often follows disaster? That is the problem, and that is the opportunity. So who is NPHS? To answer that question, it matters who is doing the work. Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services, or NPHS, is not entering this conversation from only one discipline. We are not only a lender. We are not only a counselor. We are not only a housing organization. NPHS is a community-based platform that sits at the intersection of housing, lending, and implementation. Founded in 1991, we've grown into a nonprofit housing and community finance organization serving underserved households across California. Over time, that work has expanded to include housing counseling, lending, affordable housing development activity, and more recently, factory-built housing delivery through Homes by NPHS. And this combination matters because after disaster, households do not need one narrow intervention. They need an institution that can help them make decisions, navigate constraints, structural capital, and more toward the real housing outcome. In other words, the challenge is not just construction, the challenge is coordination. And that is where NPHS has a meaningful role to play. We are positioned not simply to finance a unit, but to support a pathway from disruption to stability, a pathway from uncertainty to action, and ideally, a pathway not only back into housing, but toward sustainable homeownership. So the rebuilding need. Let's look at the problem itself. So after a disaster, homeowners are often thrust into a role that they were never trained to perform. And that's why the discussion today about permitting, about everything that you need to know about rebuilding. They are expected to understand permitting, to compare contractors, to interpret code requirements, to manage insurance proceeds, to coordinate financing, to make resilience decisions. And at the same time, to secure temporary housing and maintain some sense of normalcy for their family. That is not a realistic burden for most people. And this is why post-disaster recovery so often turns into displacement. Well, as Enterprise has noted in its resilience work, yes, I do read the website, I do check it out. Climate-related disasters are becoming more frequent and more intense. And in their article, Reducing Displacement After a Disaster, Enterprise highlights something critical. Disaster does not affect everyone equally. Insurance may fall short, housing scarcity drives up costs, temporary relocation becomes unstable, and households with fewer resources face the longest and hardest road back. So when we say rebuilding, we should be careful because the real issue is not just whether a home gets rebuilt eventually. The real issue is whether a household can remain anchored to place during the recovery period, or whether the rebuilding process itself becomes the mechanism of displacement. And that is the gap this model is trying to address. And why factory-built ADUs? Because in a recovery setting, they do something very important. They create a way for families to get back onto their property without the larger rebuilding process as it continues. It changes the role of the ADU entirely. It is no longer just an accessory structure. It becomes a recovery tool. And it works for three reasons. First, the speed. Factory-built delivery shifts a significant portion of construction offsite and into a controlled environment. That can compress the timeline and reduce the uncertainty that comes from weather delays, subcontractor sequencing, and extended on-site construction. Second, cost certainty. In disaster recovery, open-ended cost exposure is devastating. A more standardized and factory-based process can provide a more predictable scope and a more controlled cost framework than a fully built, custom site-built process. Third, risk reduction. Families who have already experienced disruption should not also have to carry the full burden of construction management. A recovery model that reduces rework, reduces on-site chaos, and reduces homeowner exposure to delay has real value beyond the unit itself. Also in Los Angeles, this becomes even more significant because recovery guidance allows standalone ADU to be built and occupied during primary home reconstruction, with temporary occupancy continuing through January 7, 2030. That is not a small policy detail. That is a recovery opening. It means ADU can help restore habitation before the full rebuild is complete. That is exactly the kind of practical bridge families need. So the NPHS recovery pathway is such that the ADU alone is not the model. The model is the pathway around it. At NPHS, that pathway has three parts. The first is housing counseling, our education system. As a HUD-approved housing counseling agency, NPHS already provides education and counseling that help households make informed housing decisions in a disaster setting. That function becomes even more valuable. It helps homeowners move from confusion to orientation. It helps them understand options, constraints, and the next steps. As it helps ground recovery process decisions, it supports the homeowner to not panic. The second is resilience-oriented financing. Traditional capital does not always move well in disrupted environments. Disaster recovery creates timing gaps, underwriting complexity, insurance timing issues, and layered funding challenges. A mission-driven lending platform can help bridge those gaps and support stronger rebuilding choices, not just the minimum possible replacement. The third is factory-built delivery through Homes by NPHS. This is where the model becomes tangible. Counseling helps define the path, lending helps structure the means, but delivery is what turns recovery strategy into physical housing. And that integration matters because too often recovery systems are fragmented. There's one group that advises, another finances, and another builds. And the homeowner is left trying to stitch it all together. What NPHS offers is not just a product set. It is a more coherent recovery architecture. Why this model works? So why does this model hold together? Because it aligns recovery need with an operational approach that is more manageable for households. The case is not based on novelty. It is based on fit. Factory-built housing offers a more controlled production environment. It can reduce weather-related delay. It can reduce rework. It can narrow the uncertainty of on-site scope. And for families, that means fewer moving parts during a period when they are already carrying too much. NPHS's own platform also matters here. This is not a concept being proposed in the abstract. It is being advanced by an institution with years of housing community finance experience, with a record of home buyer support and community investment, and with a factory-built pathway already in use. So the position is not, here is a new product. The proposition here is a recovery model that is better matched to the realities households face after disaster. That distinction matters especially for the experts in this room. Because if we are serious about resilience, we should not only ask whether a structure can be replaced, we should ask whether the pathway back home is actually usable by the people most affected. ADU Go and its financing pathway. So this brings me to ADU Go. ADU Go is important, but it should not be the opening story. The opening story is the rebuilding need. ADU Go is the execution path inside that larger story. It is the financing mechanism that helps make this recovery model actionable for eligible owners. That positioning is critical. If we lead with a loan, we risk shrinking the vision to a product pitch. If we lead with the recovery problem, then ADU Go makes sense as the tool that helps solve it. In that structure, ADU Go helps finance the factory-built ADU and certain site readiness needs tied to placement. It translates the promise of speed, cost control, and return to property recovery into something a household can actually use. And that is the point. The goal is not simply to admire the model. The goal is to make it executable. For recovery systems to matter, they have to be financeable, understandable, and deliverable. ADU Go matters because it helps close the gap. And I'll close with this. The goal after disaster is not simply to rebuild what was there before. The goal is to restore stability, reduce displacement, and shorten the distance between loss and habitability in a way that is more predictable, more practical, and more resilient. That is why the conversation matters. And that is why the factory-built ADU deserves to be understood not just as a housing option, but as a recovery instrument. For NPHS, the opportunity is clear. Lead with the problem. Families need a faster path home, then show how the ADU function is the recovery tool. ADU Go helps make the pathway real. Enterprises resilience work reminds us the climate-related disasters are intensifying and that recovery planning matters most when it reduces displacement and helps communities return the dignity. That is the spirit of the model. It is not simply about rebuilding. It is about rebuilding in a way that keeps people connected to place, restores agency, and gives recovery a structure strong enough to hold and build on. A faster path home is not only a housing outcome, it is a resilience strategy, a displacement strategy, and ultimately a community stability strategy. Thank you. I'll be here all week. Parampam.
Thank you so much, Mel, and thank you so much for also weaving in enterprises philosophy throughout your presentation. We will now open it up for questions. If you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A. We have time for probably one or two questions. I will start us off with asking, I know I mentioned earlier junior ADUs and seeing if junior ADUs qualify for the financing program as well. So the ADUs that are potentially like attached to the primary home still. Do they qualify?
It does become real property. So
Okay.
it is qualified depending on different financing programs. But our financing program is tied to those manufacturers that we have vetted. The questions earlier are about the warranties, are about that. So we do have different manufacturers. We're not the ones manufacturing them on our own. But yes, once they've been vetted through the system that we have, then yes, they qualify for financing.
So, yeah, are there any questions in the chat?
Yeah, I brought my model here of the wall.
Oh, that's really cool.
A lot of people think they're like prefab folks or injection molding, but they're really, this is fireproof cement. These are from different manufacturers, by the way. This is pretty much the vetting that we do, that to make sure that these are resilient ADUs. They're not just the ones that they're not just plywood that you put together. So there you have your insulation here, and this has been upgraded from a 2x4 to a 2x6, and pretty much this is your board for what you see on the inside. But yeah, that's pretty much your wall. Any questions? Let me know.
Awesome.
And I'm so sorry, Dominique. I'm just going to speak up as another panelist. Mel, I love that you showed that because that is, I think, the best representation of what's possible using offsite construction. It's super similar to what you would be doing site build. It just happened to be delivered to a factory, and
Yeah.
you are also able to upgrade above some of the standard materials that may be used in a more traditional build. And so we build, I think, almost exactly the same product with some of the same factory partners as NPHS. And so it's like just such a good representation of how you can be really thoughtful about fire safety and about build quality when you're building in a factory.
Yes, and I have mind about me to connect with you because we would like to invite you to be an approved manufacturer. So
Yeah, we love that.
yeah.
We can go ahead. Thank you all of the speakers. Thank you so much for your great presentations. We're going to move the presentation along, and now Araceli, who is from Enterprise Community Partners, will be sharing just a few policy updates for homeowners to just be updated on. So now we'll turn it over to Araceli, and let me add a spotlight to you, Araceli. And again, thank you all
Oh,
so much. And we'll include all of your contact information. So if individuals have questions, they can reach out directly. Thank you all.
awesome. Well, thanks, Dominique, for the spotlight. That feels special. I will just be a few minutes here because I know we're getting ready to close. But my name is Araceli, and I do state and local policy for Southern California Enterprises Southern California market. And we've been tracking legislation over the past year and this year really, but specific to wildfire recovery, so that we could fully understand kind of how the state and city and county are enabling recovery efforts through certain policies. So I'm just going to take a minute to point out a couple that we saw come out of last year's session. These were bills that went into effect this year. The first one is AB 462, which streamlined ADU approvals in the coastal zone by requiring coastal permit decisions within 60 days. So again, with the theme of allowing folks to move quickly and without a ton of barriers. And similarly, AB 818 sped up local permitting after disasters, requiring decisions within 10 business days for ADUs, manufactured homes, modular homes in the reconstruction. So these are two that I would encourage folks to just be aware of. We also saw a lot of allowances and ordinances at a local level within the county and within the city that helps enable adding ADUs into your lots. And so also encourage folks, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, to contact those planning departments, the city county departments, to ensure that you're fully maximizing these opportunities. Because I think, as you heard on this webinar, and our state and local leaders really recognize ADUs as an important tool for not just housing, but for recovery efforts. And then finally, I just want to highlight one critical resource that I often reference on things ADUs is HCD's ADU handbook. It was last updated last month, so this year. And it now reflects all of the new state ADU laws that have gone into effect this year. And it offers a nice kind of summary of relevant policies that you should be aware of. And I just also want to note that within that, if there are questions about any specific pieces of legislation as you navigate this process, they do have a way, an online ADU portal where you can specifically ask about some of these specific policies or laws that you might be encountering. So I want to make sure folks are aware of those resources. We, as Enterprise, engages and tracks state legislation this year, are always looking for opportunities to uplift new pieces of legislation or the ways that things are kind of evolving through the legislature. So just a plug to stay up to date with our newsletter. We'll highlight some of these pieces of legislation in the coming months as things move through the legislature. But we'll turn it back to Dominique for closing, since I know we only have a couple minutes here.
Thank you, Araceli, for just sharing. I know the policy landscape is ever changing, so thank you for making sure that everyone is up to date in tracking all of those policy changes. As we close, we know that rebuilding is financially and emotionally challenging. And so we want to make sure that we're also sharing some mental health resources. So on the screen in a second, you'll see a few resources that you can utilize as a homeowner to help access to mental health resources. If you go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, I messed up. But so we have the want to also make sure that we are aware of Office that I shared before is a partner in this work, and they are offering trauma-informed case management. And so they joined us for the first webinar to overview their program. They still have space in their case management services. And so if you would like one-on-one support to help you navigate the process, please scan this QR code to get, a consultation with them, an intake call to help and have partnership there. And now if you go to the next slide, we have some mental health resources for you to utilize and take advantage of to make sure that you are, checking on yourself mentally and making sure you're in a good place as you are rebuilding. And then lastly, want to again, thank you all for joining us for this webinar. We have 3 more webinars coming up in the series. The next one will be on incorporating fire resistant standards. So please join us for that webinar. We'll be at the exact same time from 12 to 1:30. And then we will close with a survey. It's a very quick survey just to see how you enjoyed the webinar. You can provide feedback on if there's any area that you would like to learn more about. And we are going to be sending a recap email with the presentations today, along with, I'll try my best to put together a Q&A. So we have that all in one place for all of the questions that were answered in the recording. Thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you. Brian just dropped the survey in the chat, so please take the survey if you have time. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for organizing, Dominique. This was awesome.
No problem. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.